everyone. Welcome into the Blitz, and I am your host, Michael Barnaud, and today we will be discussing Scott Frost and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, if you like this video, press the subscribe button below and click the bell next to it so you'll be notified whenever I release new content. Thanks for watching and hope you enjoy. Barnaud, where I discuss various topics on this channel regarding all matters of the football world. And today's topic is the Nebraska football team and why it is that they have not had the success that many of us expected they'd have. Now, 2 years ago, when Scott Frost first got hired for the job, if you told me Scott Frost is going to be 10-14 and would not have gone to a bowl game by now, I'd have said you're crazy. I would have said, call the guys in the white coats, tell them to come get this guy. He's out of his mind. There's no way. I wouldn't have believed you, and no one else would have believed you. And the thing is, everyone expected them to take, okay, fine, first year they go 5-7, whatever. It was obviously disappointing, but we thought, okay, year two, they'll make that big jump. And year two gets here, and it was more of the same. I mean, in the preseason, they were voted by the coaches a consensus to win the Big Ten West. Everybody thought this team was going to be the real deal. Scott Frost was in front of all the microphones and press conferences saying, this is a Nebraska football team now. We didn't look like one before, but now, we're really getting there. He was really talking this team up. He was really saying they've made a lot of progress. And then the season gets here, and lo and behold, it's the same team. Now, I kind of knew we were looking at the same team. That first game against South Alabama was kind of like, okay, maybe they just came out rusty. They struggled way more with them than people thought they would. Vegas at that time had Nebraska down as a 35-point favorite in that game. Vegas was drinking the Kool-Aid. Everybody was. This just gives you an idea. So then they come out, they underwhelm against South Alabama. But the moment that I knew that this was the same Nebraska team in 2019 that it was in 2018 was the Colorado game. When they're up 17 and they somehow find a way to blow it in the fourth quarter, and the defense can't make a stop to save their lives, and when they lost that game, that was when I knew, because I knew it sure as heck wasn't Colorado is that good. All right, I knew that. It's not Colorado's that good. It's Nebraska hasn't improved at all. So that was the game that set everything up. It was like, okay, this game right here was the ultimate Miyagi moment. It was just like, this team is not what we all thought it was going to be. And ultimately, it boils down to the defense. So there are two numbers. Now, I'm usually not a stats guy. I don't love stats normally. I think stats can lie. I think stats can help tell a story, but I also think they can lie. And if you're only looking at stats, then it can throw off your perception of things. But with Nebraska, the stats actually tell the whole story. There are two stats that I really pay attention to. When I'm looking at a team and I'm looking at a defense, I want to figure out, okay, what is the problem? Like, these are the two barometers by which I measure how good a defense is. The first is, can they stop the run? That's the first thing I look at. The second is, how many points per game do they give up? Those are the two most important barometers by which you measure a defense. If you look at only those two, in the past two seasons, 2018, Nebraska gave up on the ground 195 yards per game. That was only good for 95th in the country, and it was 12th in the Big Ten in 2018. 95th in the country, 12th in the Big Ten in 2018. And then if you look at their scoring defense, they gave up 31.3 points per game, which was 88th in the country, and that also was 12th in the Big Ten. You fast forward a year. The rushing numbers are the same. They're giving up 188 yards per game, which is 94th in the country, and then 11th in the Big Ten. And then look at the points per game, only a moderate improvement there also. Still giving up 27. The year before, they gave up 33. Now they give up 27, a moderate improvement, but still way too much. It still ranks 11th in the Big Ten. And his defensive coordinator's calling card is turnovers. Now let me tell you something about turnovers. In my experience with football, coaching it, playing it, watching it, in all the years that I've watched just hours and hours, his turnovers, it's kind of a red flag to me. Because what that says is, well, we're not really invested in stopping people. We're more invested in how we can get like a cheap takeaway. Because if the problem with this philosophy is if you don't get turnovers, well, then do you get stops? And the reality for Nebraska is that they don't. So I look at it and I see that as the first thing. So those are the numbers, but that's also borne out in the film. And when all the times I've watched Nebraska play, they come across as soft, and their gap defense is just not disciplined. They're asking guys to do too much, and the linebackers, in my opinion, play way too lateral. They don't play nearly hard enough downhill, and they're just not a physical defense. They're not a physical, stop the run, get the run game stopped, and then put an offense in bad spots. That is not Nebraska right now. They strike me, they look a lot like an American defense from the American Conference, where all you need is an offense. But the problem is, the Big Ten is not the American. There are way too many teams in the Big Ten that have way too strong of a tradition defensively. These teams are not just going to let you light them up. You can't go into the Big Ten and not play deep about Nebraska. I like the two inside linebackers they have now. Will Honus was a JUCO transfer they had, and then the other guy that they had, Colin Miller. Now, with each of them, there's a lot that I like. With Will Honus, he's a guy who is a thumper in the run game, and I love that out of an inside linebacker. Like if you're asking me what I want, Will Honus has the raw ingredients. I don't know if he's a star at inside backer, but he has the raw ingredients to play it at a high level. He's physical. He wants to play the run. He plays hard downhill. He gets downhill quickly. I like the way Will Honus plays against the run. And then the other guy, Miller, has a lot of traits that you want. He has a lot of athleticism, and you can work with that. Like he's got a lot of physical problems in that way for an offense, and yet they have this huge, oversized defensive line that doesn't even play as big as they are. So I think losing those guys might help them. This strikes me as a scheme inconsistency that they had, and maybe going to move forward in the Big Ten. If Scott Frost is going to have any success in the Big Ten at Nebraska, and I'm hoping he does, he needs to understand that these two things cannot be. They can't just ignore these. You have to stop people in the Big Ten. You can't just rely on turnovers and big plays and just think that teams are going to let you score points and you're just going to win in shootouts every week. You need across the board. Another reason for optimism, that brings me, level of athletes, brings me another reason for optimism if you're at Nebraska. They just pulled in the 20th ranked recruiting class in the nation. So Scott Frost is recruiting pretty well. I mean, you're at Nebraska, 20th ranked recruiting class for Nebraska is pretty good. I like where they saw no real improvement in this team from year 1 to year 2. So how much improvement will they make from year 2 to year 3? I don't know, but I'm pessimistic about it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on this. But I wanted to touch on Nebraska because I have a lot of friends who are Nebraska fans. And I did have one person talk to me about it last week. And we discussed, he said, you should talk about that. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. But I live near Nebraska, and I want to see that program do well. But while these problems exist, I just don't see it happening. So anyway, that will do it for this edition of The Blitz. I am your host, Michael Barnaud. We will see you next time.